Dave, well, you didn't know that you were invited to our first ever carpool interview. No karaoke required. But you are for viewers and listeners. If you're seeing this or hearing this, I'm taking our first ever interview from my car due to some unique circumstances. So this is just the life of a solopreneur. You carry your laptop where you can and do interviews where you can. So Dave, again, we're not going to make you sing karaoke, but we so appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Who is that guy that interviews people in his car, like the English?
Yeah, Josh. It's Corden, James Corden.
James Corden. Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll give him a run for his money today.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Well, Dave, we've actually recently had a similar guest on, but what I love about this topic is that everybody has a unique take. You certainly do. I have loved preparing for this interview because I just find what you do so fascinating. So can you share a bit about your background and what led you to become a manifestation coach?
Yeah, I'd love to. So my whole life, I've always known that there was something, even as a young child, that there was always like something at the back of our results, at the back of our behavior, like a power, like my intuition, I guess you would call it intuition. And I never saw colors or anything like that. But I always could have a good read on people. I always had a strong intuition. Like the first time I ever heard of the thing called a woman's intuition, I was like, I think I have that. I think I have one of those. I think I was born with a woman's intuition. So throughout my life, I'd always had this feeling that there was something bigger going on. Until I was 18 years old, I'd never had anybody ever educate me or direct me on it. And when I was 18 years old, I got to meet a man named Bob Proctor, who I would say is like the original gangster of personal development. For those that haven't heard of him before, he was in the manifestation and personal development space for 60 years before he passed away at 87. And I went to a talk of his when I was 18 years old. My mother brought me, and that changed the direction of my whole life. I'd never had anybody talk like that. I'd had soccer coaches growing up. I had teachers. I had my parents. I had, all forms of adults, my friends, parents educating me on things and giving me ideas. But when I saw Bob Proctor for those 2 hours, I'd never had anybody talk like that. And what it did was it opened up my mind to a whole nother world. And, when he was speaking, I think it was the first time that I'd ever actually considered success. Prior to that, if you were to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Those kids are asked that, and some will say, I'm a firefighter. And, my daughter is like, I want to be a dance teacher. I wouldn't have been able, I was never able to answer it. I really never thought beyond further than my nose. I was always in the present, So when I started hearing about things called success, I started thinking, wow, and I became very attracted to it. Unfortunately, I was unable to actually produce success in my life for 15 years after that. It wasn't until I hit 33 years old that the dots started to connect in a big way.
Wow, what a story, and what a moment to be so young and have somebody change your life. I'm in my mid 30s, and sometimes I'm still oh, what do I want to do? I do like doing this, for the record, but that's just so cool to have such an experience so young. Well, so let me ask you, how do you define manifestation? How does it work for you?
Yeah, so one of my purposes in life is I think manifestation is like a bad rap. You'll hear of terms called woo woo and things like that. I don't think it's woo woo at all. Manifestation is what human beings do all day long. All we're ever trying to do is move a thought from our mind into our world. So we're trying to take this thought, which is a non-physical form of energy. We're trying to take it. We're trying to move it through us, and we're trying to bring it out into our life. And when people start to realize that all a human being is a manifestation center, and that there's a process at the back of everything in this world, this whole universe is an orderly universe. Nothing happens by mistake. Edgar Mitchell, who is the sixth man on the moon, he said that there is no such thing as miracles, just gaps in our awareness. Albert Einstein, same thing. He didn't create the law of relativity. He became aware of it. He discovered the law of relativity. And as human beings, if we start to understand that it's all about that expansion of awareness all the time. So when it comes to manifestation, I have successfully put manifestation on a very logical platform so that we remove all that mystique. We may not know everything that's going on in behind, but we do understand that it operates by law. So moving thought into the world, also known as results.
So I want to dig in on that a little bit. My background's in physics, and I studied, that going back to the 80s, and I studied quantum mechanics. And back in the 80s, there was this weird problem with quantum mechanics that at the end of the day, it all came down to a consciousness perceiving anything before it would actually be in a particular state. The favorite one is Schrodinger's cat, right? The cat is alive and dead until somebody observes it, which is, was trying to make a point of being patently absurd. But, here I am now, decades later, they still haven't solved this problem that at the root of quantum mechanics is a conscious observation. And I'm wondering, when you talk about manifestation and we don't understand it, are you thinking in terms of like there's some undiscovered science that might be playing a role here, or is this just practical, think about it, you'll do things that will make it happen? I mean, where do you come down on that one? Because I know that there are different perceptions of how this phenomenon works.
Mm-hmm. Well, I subscribe to believe that it's a thought universe. When I first became aware of that, I'll be very honest, like it scared me to realize that there's two forms of thought. There's the intangible form in which we're all familiar, which is the non-physical. Like, well, where is thought? Well, we're going to say, well, it's in our head or in our brain, or, where you can't see them because they're non-physical. It's like air. Unless it's cold and outside in Canada, then you can see it when you release it. Right? So there's the intangible form of thought, and then there's the tangible form of thought. So we know that there's the law of vibration, and everything is functioning on a frequency. We know that. We know that there's only one energy. Leibniz introduced us to that a few hundred years ago, where he basically theorized, he's like, everything is the same thing. And then it took another man to come along a few hundred years later called Boltzmann, who then, proved the atom. So when we focus on something, our conscious awareness of that thing expands. So when we start to understand that, when we have an intangible thought, what we're really trying to do is change the frequency of it. The third dimension, the physical world, is the densest dimension. Like it's the lowest vibrations. The higher vibrations are etherical. That's why if like a raindrop dropped on your head, you'd feel it. But if a piece of hail dropped on your head, you would really feel it. So it's the densest vibration. It's vibrating on the densest level. So when it comes to manifestation, all we're trying to do is take that intangible thought, and we're actually trying to change the frequency of it. When I realized this, I became actually afraid, because I started to realize that the physical world, in my mind, the physical world is still the thought world. It's just on a different frequency.
As somebody who's considers himself scientific, I'm having more and more trouble kind of looking at that kind of perception and going, no, there's something there. There's something beyond our kind of typical physical laws that we kind of live by, that's affecting things, and it's really, really interesting. So thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, there's seven primary laws. So there's the perpetual transmutation of energy, which is very similar to, like, you could look at it through the law of conservation of energy. So energy is now neither created nor destroyed, which then would lead us to deduce that everything's already here. It's just on a different vibration. So creation's already done. You are just, as human beings, you're just manifesting a portion of creation. So if energy is, then the idea of lack should be removed from a person's mind, because it's all here. Energy is. There is no such thing as lack. It's a perception problem. So you have the perpetual transmutation of energy. You have the law of cause and effect, the law of vibration, the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, the law of relativity, and the law of gender. If you go back like a few thousand years ago, back to the Kabbalion, their first law is the law of mentalism. They've been saying it for thousands of years, which is interesting because a lot of humanity's looping back around information that's thousands and thousands of years old. It's whatever you focus on expands. If a person took a pen and you start staring at that pen long enough, you might have owned this pen for 10 years. And I will guarantee you, as you start to focus on it, you will start to become aware of things that you never saw before. And that's how expansion works. That's how awareness expands. When you focus, it expands. So what I get people to do is I get people to build a clear mental picture in their mind, understanding that that is a real thing. As you focus, it'll increase the amplitude of vibration and it'll start to move out. You'll start to attract things into your life. You'll start to attract different thoughts into your life. It's all focus.
So I think it's fair to say that the answer there is that there's things that we don't understand, or at least in the world of mainstream science, that have not yet come to understand that you think are impacting this. That's fair to say?
100%.
Okay.
But there's little...
Yeah, I wasn't trying to go down a rabbit hole. I just wanted to.
Oh, well, don't get me going down a rabbit hole. I will say this one thing before we move on, if I could. Energy is. No one knows what energy is. There's not a soul on the planet that knows what energy is. It just is. But we do know one thing. It operates by law. It is under some governing body. We do know that. So as human beings, we can start to identify what laws are governing success, and we can start to know what's transmuting that into our life, which is beautiful.
Well, I am going to take us out of this rabbit hole really quick because this is all so fascinating, and I feel like we could talk about this for the next few hours. But in order to respect your time, I am curious, like, how can solopreneurs apply these key principles to their daily routines for better success?
Yeah. On the weekend, I was studying and I was like contemplating, and I had this outburst. I was by myself at the cottage, and I said, if you don't have a goal, you're screwed. I yelled that out to myself. You got to have a goal. Got to have a goal as a solopreneur. If you don't have a goal, you'll get destroyed by all of the responsibilities of your business. You got to have a goal. What I teach people as well is, like, when you set a goal, you got to build a clear mental picture. What is something that would showcase that goal being fulfilled? Because you and I, we think in pictures. And as you get that image, then you take periods of time. I recommend 30 minutes a day where you just start to focus on that image. You start doing that, I'm telling you here now, just your business will start to change.
Can you give an example of like a goal and an associated image, just so people like 100%.
Me? So I used to be a carpenter. Like, as I said earlier, like, I never was able to create success for like 15 years around this information. But I was missing some main things. I didn't have a visualization practice. I wasn't building clear mental pictures. Was conditioned to working harder was the way to get ahead, and we know that that's not true. Providing great service is how you do it. So when I was earning $5,000 a month as a carpenter, and my first goal was to earn $100,000 a month in the personal development space as a mentor and speaker. So what I did in the beginning, this is very common. I'd visualize the money in the bank account on the computer screen. Well, that didn't really turn me on. I was like, that's not exciting image to me. So what I did was I built like a little mini movie, and I actually used a lot of memories to build my image out. So I had the $100,000 goal, doing this work. So what I did was, at my bank, when you pull up to my bank, like, it's all glass. So I pulled up to the bank in my mind. I built this image. So I'm familiar with the bank. So I knew the images of that. At the time, my dream car was a Jaguar. And so I went to the dealership, test drove it. So I got to see all that. I locked that into my memory. And so what I did was I drove up to my bank, saw my reflection in the mirror, saw the car, saw myself. Then I saw myself in the car, could feel the handle. I'd open the handle, I'd get out of the car. This is all through visualization. I'd close the car, beep, beep, hear the lock button, hear the door close, go up to the bank, open the door, feel the metal on the door, go into the vestibule, the second one, feel that metal. I'd walk into the bank, and like a bank's almost like a library. Like, once you go in, like, it's the vibration, like the energy is like, it's gets like really quiet. Yeah, it's like this like heavier energy. It's like a library. Anyway, I'd walk up, and then I would see the teller, very familiar lady. Her name was Lori. She'd been at the bank as long as I was at the bank. I'd see her. She'd look at me. She'd nod. I'd go up, take the wallet out, take the debit out, put it in, then I would, she'd say, what can I do for you? I'd say, how much is in the bank? She would say, and then she would knock her little monitor thing over to me, and then I would see it, I would hear it, and I would feel it. 31 months I lived in that visualization over and over and over and over and over every day, multiple times a day, over and over and over. My income went from $5,000 a month as a carpenter to over $100,000 a month doing this work. Took 31 months for my subconscious mind to pick up that image.
So I just want to piggyback off of that. I set a goal this year. Somebody had told me about all of this. I would say I became familiar with this about a year ago. And I had set a goal for myself this year to do a triathlon. And instead of having pictures of my family on my phone as my home screen like I normally would, I put a picture of a triathlete. And I thought about it, thought what the water would feel like, training, like everything. And I am not a triathlete by any sense of the word. It was a big stretch. And I did it yesterday. And I put it on my phone because I was like, well, I'm going to have my phone on me all the time anyway. I may as well have a place where I can constantly be looking at it, constantly be thinking about it. And I got to say, there's something to it because I am not one to usually do that. And I did. And I would be nuts to say that didn't have something to do with it because I made a tweak that I want to have done and had that visualization right there. So
it's amazing. Yeah.
But I want to circle back because you were talking about how it took you 15 years to see that success and that you're missing some things. So if things aren't panning out for solopreneurs and they think they're doing everything right, where do they go wrong? And how can they fill in those gaps and learn from your mistakes, I guess?
It's interesting, a lot of the world is a promoter of working hard. I think your listeners are probably working too hard. And that what was in me was a part of my paradigm. It was a part of my belief system. I really did believe that working harder was going to get me where I wanted to be. I did not have a daily visualization practice. I was not operating the clear mental picture. I missed the memo on the paradigm and the self-image. I think we get so familiar with ourselves and the way we're doing things that we don't ever stop and think. So we get so busy, and as solopreneurs, you're all alone. So the IRS wants their accounting done. The billing has to be done. You're everything, right? A lot of us, you're doing 10 different tasks. Well, you start getting smoked. And then what happens is then you start buying management stuff to try and manage all your tasks. Well, what is if you stop for a second and start to build an image in a world where you don't even do those tasks? So sometimes the solution to our problem is worse than the problem.
So what is the result of this that people are doing too many things that don't really need to be done? Is that what you're saying? That
Yes.
They're doing things that just aren't really necessary to their success because we feel the need to be busy?
Well, I think that, not necessarily. It's those things in the business have to be done. The problem with the solopreneur is that you're the only person that's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, we're always telling people, get help, get a bookkeeper, get a this, get a that, get a VA, because we totally agree. It's like you do all that stuff, you don't do anything important.
That's right. So these things have to be done. We're not wrong in understanding that. There's rules of business, there's things have to be done. But if you can start to operate with a clear mental picture, if you can build that image, and like Carly said, set reminders where you're every time, it's triggering the image. We got to understand that the body is just an instrument of the mind. We're a spiritual being, we have an intellect, and we live in a physical body. The body obeys the mind. Any image that goes into the subconscious mind, the body will automatically move that image into form. It will move. It controls the behavior of a human being. It's called a habit.
So how do people course correct? Because I think there's a lot of people that are self-deprecating or do negative self-talk. And you're saying that can, you can manifest not necessarily positive things. So if people have lived their whole life in that way, how do they flip the switch to develop these positive habits?
First thing you gotta do is sit down. So first thing is stop. Just stop. Just stop, even for 2 hours. Just stop. Just stop what you're doing. If you don't like your results, Just stop for a second. At least if you stop doing, even if you stop, then the results will stop if you're producing them all. So number one is stop. Sit down, ask yourself, what do I really want? What do I really want? How do I really want to live? And dream as big as you possibly can. Once you select that thing, build a clear mental picture or a little mini movie or something that would reflect that that thing is complete, like me at the bank. After you do that, then the last phase is ask yourself, who is the man, woman, or person that is naturally producing that? So if we listen to Carly talk about triathlon, she said, I'm not a triathlete. Well, that's not true, because there was a triathlete inside there. There was one in there. The truth is, there's a multimillionaire in there too. Anything you focus on is in there. Every self-image exists in every human being at the same time. It's the one that they focus on that will rise to the surface. For some reason, we've bought into this idea. We have these like invisible rules that we think we have to obey. And I'll tell you right now, it's total bullcrap.
Yeah, they're such limiting beliefs. Well, so speaking of the multimillionaire inside of me, and just you going back to like your experience of it taking a while, if people want that success sooner rather than later, are there things that they can be implementing now? And like, what can they be doing right now to increase their income tomorrow? Let's say. Yeah.
Well, the goal setting with the image and the self-image always is always the main thing. You got to keep the main thing. But if a person really wants to break free, you have a thing called a freedom formula. So the first thing is you got to get an elite level mentor. What is mentorship? Mentorship is the transference of ideas and belief. That's all it is. Now, if you don't have a mentor, what are human beings doing all the time? All they're doing is walking around transferring their ideas and beliefs to you. So if you don't have an outright mentor that you are locked into, you could be mentored by anybody. That person that cut you off on the street, if you let them in, they just became your mentor because you absorbed their energy. So when people hire mentors, what they're after, they think they're after more ideas. No, what you're really after is their belief system. So when I used to I was mentored by Bob Proctor, and I worked directly with him. And in the first couple of years, I would learn something. So I heard this concept that we live in an infinite universe, that there's an infinite supply, and that the human imagination can tap into this infinite supply. And I went up to him and I said, hey, is there an infinite supply? And I said, do you believe there's an infinite supply? And he said, yes. And I said, that's my belief now too. So the faster I acquired his belief system, the faster my life started to change. And I was very attracted to his life. What mentorship really does is it collapses time. That's really what it does. So I have a lot of clients that'll come, let's say they're making $100,000 a year and they want to start making $100,000 a month, right? So they want to make $1.2 million in a year. So they want 12x their income. Okay, well, you got to understand something. You already know how to do that. Your problem is it's going to take you 12 years. Like if you earn $100,000 a month for the next 12 years, you'll earn 1.2 million. What you're trying to do is shrink that into 1 year. And that's all in awareness. So mentorship is essential. The second is systematic study. Read the same things over and over and over and over. When I started getting mentored by Bob Proctor, he got me to read the decision chapter out of Think and Rich every day for 18 months. The same chapter. Who does that? Nobody. Who visualizes the exact same visualization every day for 31 days, multiple times a day? Nobody. And this is why people's lives don't change. You see, it's not the intellect that you need to feed. It's your subconscious mind that you need to feed. The same thing that beats your heart is the same thing that produces results. It's the exact same process.
And so what's the third thing?
And then the third is your environment. So the human mind is like a sponge. It absorbs the vibrations of your environment. So when you start getting around different environments, you'll start to attract in those vibrations. You know, I'll have a lot of people say, oh, no, I don't believe in God. I'm spiritual. I say, oh, yeah, where do you get your spirituality? They say, well, nature. Right. Like everybody knows when you go for a walk in nature, you feel wonderful. Why? Because nature is perfect. There's no disharmony in nature. There's no conflict in nature. Human beings are the only creatures on the planet that bring disorder into this world. We're the only ones that do it. So as you start to absorb perfection and harmonious vibrations, you actually absorb it into yourself. This is why you don't like going to the in-laws sometimes, because you're so out of harmony with their belief system. This is how it is. You'll meet somebody, your intuition will know. You'll see somebody, your intuition will pick it up. You'll know if you should trust them or not trust them. You could feel them. It's almost like you know everything about everyone just by being around them, just even seeing them. You'll know it across the street. You'll know if you're attracted to someone or not. As you start to understand that your mind is like a sponge to environments and vibration, you'll start to realize that your biggest issue that you have is the environment you're in. It's the number one thing that gets everybody before they start, and it's the number one thing that gets everybody as they start to go along. So you got to get around different environments, higher level environments. What kind of environments, Dave? Environments that reflect the goal achieved.
So let me ask you a question, because you were talking about, like you were saying, reading the same chapters, getting that 1.2 million down to a year. Do you find that people need to be focusing on one thing at a time in order to manifest this, or can they have multiple goals going on and just allocate the same amount of time to each of those goals?
You got to have your one overarching goal, like a stretch goal. You got to have a one overarching goal. So, for example, my $100,000 a month goal, like there was a Jaguar included in that visualization. So there's all these little motives, like you got to live life, right? Like you have to live in a home. You have to drive a car. You have to wear clothes. You have to go on vacations. You have to eat. You have to do things. So you can have parts of it that bring in, but at the center of it all is the main goal. Focus on the main goal.
So if somebody was like, I want to make...
I call it sprinkling in motives. Like if there's other little things you want to bring in, sprinkle them in.
So if somebody wanted to make $1.2 million this year, but also get a six-pack abs. Those goals are seemingly unrelated. How would you, they're like, but they're equal. I really want that six-pack, but I also really want that 1.2. How would you advise they allocate their time?
I would focus on the 1.2 and then just go to the gym to get your six-pack. Every time you look in the mirror, just see yourself as you want to see yourself. Also, by the way, my income went up when I started to work out. So
there you go.
But the income's always my top motivator. Yeah, you can mix any belief into the subconscious mind. It doesn't need to be realistic.
Well, Dave, this is all so fascinating to me, and you help so many people find success through manifestation. So we have to ask you, what is your favorite quote about success?
Comes from Earl Nightingale. You are now, and you will become what you think about. So your whole life is just a manifestation of your past thinking, and the life that is held for you in the future is based upon your current thinking.
Never had that one before, so very cool.
No, well, Dave, this is so fascinating. Where can people learn more about you, and where can they find you if they want to connect after?
Come hang out. Coming out on Instagram, 2 places. So come to Instagram, Conway Consulting on Instagram. And on Instagram, I've got my 21-day challenge. And also you can check out the website at conway.consulting. And the 21-day challenge is also on there. So I created a free 21-day challenge to help people improve their ability to manifest by helping refine their image building, like their visualization, how to build images, and then through focus. So it'll help you tighten up your imagination and help you tighten up your concentration. So Instagram, Conway Consulting, and then website, www.conway.consulting, and go take the 21-day challenge.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We have so enjoyed having you, and I think you've expanded our minds. Joe, you as well.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. Per usual, we love that 5-star review. We love the subscribes on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. Please do all those. It means the world to us. Otherwise, we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.